Welcome to another episode of EVA India Insights podcast, part of our Energy Transition Dialogue series. I'm your host Pallavi, and in today's episode, we're exploring how India Inc. is accelerating its race to decarbonize through initiatives like the Carbon Credit Trading Scheme, or CCTC. With sustainability becoming a strategic imperative, Indian companies are looking for innovative ways to meet decarbonization targets, aligned with ESG frameworks, and leverage carbon markets for growth. Joining me today is Kapil Bansal, partner of Energy Transition and Decarbonization of EY Parthenon, who leads EY's India's energy transition and decarbonization practice. Kapil brings deep insights into how carbon markets and corporate strategies are shaping India's clean energy future. Thank you, Kapil, for joining us today.
Thank you, Pallavi, having me over here.
Thank you, Kapil. So to begin with, could you explain what the carbon credit trading scheme is and why it's significant for India Inc. and how it differs from previous mechanisms like the PAT scheme?
Right. So, if you look at globally, a lot of the countries has adopted, emission trading scheme. So on those lines, carbon credit trading scheme (CCTS) is a very similar um, mechanism that India is launching under the Indian carbon market to create a tradable carbon certificates towards the verified greenhouse gas emission reduction. So before the CCTS scheme has been launched, three things that has happened in the compliance market. Number one, um, India had made top 1,000 companies mandatorily ask for the BRSRS reporting, which is through which a lot of the information on the emissions has been captured by the SEBI. The second thing that India has also during COP26 through our Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned about India becoming net zero and certain Panchamrits initiatives, because of which it has become imperative for India to focus on reducing their carbon, which is directly linked to your emissions. And to do that, the top sectors that are, releasing emissions have to incorporate in their strategy certain emission reduction mechanisms and removals. And this scheme has been notified under the Energy Conservation Act of 2022. And from a regulatory standpoint of view, the scheme would be administered by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which will do the actual measurement, reporting, and verification, which we call MRV, of how the emissions are changing, what is the benchmark, and then based upon that, issuance of carbon certificates would be done, and there would be a trading framework through which there would be a complete oversight and the price discovery of the carbon markets would be done. So, from an industry standpoint of view, a CCTS will convert the carbon performance into an economic value. So companies who are outperforming their emission reduction targets from the emission intensity benchmark can generate carbon credits and they can monetize them. Whereas those who are falling short in terms of their operational improvements, they have to procure these carbon credits, which would then become a kind of an cost and revenue item. For those who have to purchase, would become a cost element. For those who sell, becomes a revenue element. So that's the basic fundamental background and the carbon credit trading scheme, CCTS, that has been currently conceptualized. As we speak, on 13th, four more industries updated benchmark and their emission intensities has been launched by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Now, this scheme is very distinct from earlier PAT scheme, which was more focused on reducing the specific energy consumption and rewarding the energy savings that you with what you do invariably, what the way you can do it. Whereas CCTS is an explicit carbon focused towards, reducing your emissions, improving your emission intensity through productivity improvements, adopting renewable energies, etc. And thus, from the delta from the benchmark, it becomes a tradable commodity in a particular exchange, which can be done by any government-based organization who is running the exchanges.
Thank you, Kapil. Now, how can Indian companies benefit from participating in carbon credit trading, and what challenges might they face in meeting decarbonization targets?
So, it's a beautiful question from an industry standpoint of view, and any organization. There are two specific impacts. One on the financial that I highlighted and alluded in the previous answer, and then there are strategic also. When you look from an financial standpoint of view, the firms, those who have done initial investment in efficiencies, improvement, either productivity, manpower, operational, etc., looked into renewable fuel switchings or looking into carbon neutral alternative fuels, also looking into the ways they can look and process optimization can generate surplus carbon credits and potentially sell it in the future market, which will improve their bottom line, top line, and then this can be further invested into a cycle of decarbonization as the technology matures, so they can further continuously benefit out of it. Whereas, as we know, carbon credits is an a mechanism towards um, uh, your overall compliance fulfillment. So, from a strategic standpoint of view, it becomes an important element for every company to adopt their net zero strategy towards looking at how they are reducing their emission impacts. And third, they helps in terms of the overall ESG credibility that they build. ESG is environment, social, and governance credibility, and help build confidence with their stakeholders, investors, and improve their overall brand positioning. However, the companies also face a lot of challenges against on the three fronts. One is technical, another is regulatory, and the third is commercial front. On the technical front, a lot of the companies still don't have the wherewith of understanding how the emission should be measured, what data systems they should do it, how that can be verified, and most of the time, garbage in is garbage out. Similar happens in the data side of the things. If there is no proper systems, then it becomes difficult to verify. That's more on the technical front. From a regulatory standpoint of view, how do they benchmark themselves becomes a challenge. What is the threshold at the company level? What kind of future risk that they are exposed to beyond their regular, day-to-day job becomes more stringent, and then they have to also start, looking into carbon perspectives, not just domestically, internationally also, as the baselines are evolving and it's dynamic towards their compliance and their top line and bottom line impact also comes through the capital intensive decarbonization technologies that are there towards electrification, carbon capture, etc., which takes a long payback period for them to capitalize them and prove it through the financial side. So hence, I would, in summarize, say companies can monetize through better performance, gain compliances with their regulators, investors, stakeholders, and strengthen their credibility on an overall basis as well as brand reputation. And carbon trading then through CCTS allows them to focus more on decarbonization strategies and and then improve their environmental conscious focus.
Thank you, Kapil. Now, pivoting towards the regulatory aspect, how ready is India's market and regulatory infrastructure for carbon trading, and how does this connect to broader ESG, sustainability, and investor expectations?
Right. When you look from this whole CCTS, it started with a consultation paper 2.5 years back. I remember in the June 2023, this was been launched that carbon and slash emission in the form of green gas house emission intensities would be assessed. So that from that journey till now. a lot of communication, interactions, and work has been done on the regulatory side by government doing the consultation paper, releasing the notification on the framework, talking about what could be the procedures of offsetting by creating meta registry, national registries, and obviously that was from concept to building the overall transparency in the system. Um and as we speak now, a lot has been put on the public domain. So there has been a significant shift from intent to implementation, as we see from an overall perspective. However, when we see from the two element of market readiness and the client readiness, or client, when I say company readiness, there are certain challenges and things are evolving. So on the market readiness, there has been ambiguity towards how the market, carbon markets liquidity would be there, how would the uh, price discovery will happen, where is the overall confidence on what has been adopted and what has been showcased. There should not be any green hushing and greenwashing, so that there is a complete transparency and the volumes picks up like the way we see our stock market volumes for any stock. Similarly, carbon stocks should also become an important element, and a proper price discovery should happen by having build-up of an implementation institution agencies towards building exchanges, doing the aggregators, verifiers, certifying agencies, market makers in the overall matured system, the way it is there in the European Union in the ETA system. And then when it comes from an um, client perspective, um, their readiness to build their technologies, to reporting, to their capital availability to execute these decarbonization measures are some of the challenges. While some of the deep pocket companies have already started, who have the good capitalization. And they are not just doing from the perspective of since this CCT is coming, but from the starting, compliance market has shown a greater significance towards making it mandate. It is also looked from an investor standpoint to ensure that not only the financial data is reported, but the operational data is also reported continuously towards robots compliance, transparency, and bringing credible transition towards a low carbon side of the world and getting a proper access to the capital and showcasing that they are ready for the overall credit rating, lending terms, and valuations from the uh, overall scheme's readiness perspective. And finally, from the um, service providers who provides the credit rating ESG agencies who provide the ratings and etc., they should also become an integral part of this overall scoring mechanisms in terms of their say in the offset mechanism, and there should not be double accounting between nations. So if CCTS is India oriented, there are other export oriented markets where there are CBAM regulations or ETS regulation. It should not be double accounted, and there should be a proper accounting mechanisms through which a harmonized global standards and the international markets are synchronized together. So that's my overall view on the readiness, and that's what we have tried to cover in our thought leadership as well.
Thank you, Kapil. Now, lastly, looking ahead, what role will innovation, technology, and capital markets play in accelerating decarbonization, and how should companies prepare for India's carbon market by 2030?
Right. So there are two parts to it. How things happen from next 3 to 4 years, and what should be the future from 2030 onwards. I think that's the 2 points that you have asked. So now and here, what I can say is what companies should do is they should start automating and digitalizing their operational data into their emission data so that there is a complete transparency. There should be a proper carbon strategy that should be built in terms of their emission reductions, in terms of its impact on their profitability, doing their automation of double materiality accounting and assessment. So lot of the things have become a commodity, and a lot of startups with AI solutions, EY also have those, should start looking into those compliance fulfillment, which is mandatory. There is no going back on that. Start looking towards building what would be, I would say, and you'll see in my thought leadership also, the cost of decarbonization technologies are rapidly decreasing, as you've seen in solar, wind, battery storages, carbon capture, hydrogen technologies, electrification. And as we see in other markets recently in EU ETS, there has been 17% increase in the carbon price. So the carbon price will completely increase. So companies should start looking into their project with a lens of internal carbon pricing. And as the CCTS come, the actual price point would be added into their overall capital allocation. And finally, there should be a complete tracking of what incentives or capital they are allocating uh, towards the towards the greening of their operations, which would then they don't need to offset it or buy carbon credits through the CCTS mechanism, but in fact, they should be below the benchmark so that they can monetize their carbon um, towards uh, towards their proper planning. And I can tell you those companies who are better prepared for this carbon credit and their reduction through decarbonization would have a better valuation in the market through the embedded carbon planning and the board oversight in comparison to their peers, and helping them to be the early movers and shaping the overall benefit. So those are some of the imperatives that I think are here and now. Whereas things on future 2030 um, would shape the complete success and the maturity of Indian carbon markets are various elements. Availability to capital would become more easy and frequent and accessible. Better cost of capital will happen. The technologies will rapidly mature, and India would start doing a lot of investment in the R&D space, patent, and doesn't have to depend on external countries. But we are already excellent in manufacturing. We just need to improve upon our R&D innovations and technology adoptions, which can bring faster localization, ownership, and benefits in the overall GDP instead of depending upon you know, outside technologies. And what recently happened in terms of technologies not getting available from critical materials refining, rare earth refining, magnets, semiconductors. So we need to look into building our own technology base. We have best engineering capabilities, and this will help us in terms of India becoming a superpower as we see. The second element that I was talking about is from the capital availability. So as carbon market stabilizes, it becomes an tradable financial lever, which wherever the money is accumulated of it can go into the development of infrastructure development, like building up hydrogen pipelines or carbon capture pipelines, which is what a lot of the EU nations, China, New Zealand is doing, and helping in terms of uh, execution of building uh, collaborative ecosystems, helping in project financing by private public partnership in the overall carbon credit mechanism, making it more bankable. And there would be definite working from investors to look more on the project from an impact standpoint of view, impact from environmental, social, and governance. And the CCTS will provide a great benchmark for it. Uh, and finally, the overall governance would become more stringent in terms of how we are reporting in the overall context of our operations and its impact to the environment, the social, the way we structure our organization within the company or startups or any organization who's looking to build up their assets. And then in terms of this overall integration, every stakeholder would have a role to play. Government will provide the right policies and harmonizations of incentives and subsidies. Um, there would be role play by the regulators to ensure that the things are being executed in rightful manner. Companies will take decisions based upon the carbon, and then finally, the market makers or the market would behave in the manner which will drive towards uh, environmental conscious, carbon neutral, working with ensuring energy security and Atmanirbharta that we are looking at. And that's what I would say is an important factor because of which CCTS is a very good scheme that has been launched. And our white paper talks about those 8 to 9 industries which will be the stalwarts towards India being self-reliant as well the sustainably uh, focused in their operational approach.
Thank you, Kapil. Now that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Palvi.
As India accelerates its clean energy journey, green finance and carbon market participation will remain the cornerstones of our collective success. Thank you for all our listeners for tuning in, and don't forget to follow or subscribe to the EVA India Insights podcast. Until next time, this is Pallavi signing off.